record this, take a little pressure off taking notes and stuff. So yeah, there's sort of, I've sort of discovered there's sort of like a chain of steps that through, if you use Adobe in a certain way, that is very powerful. So I just want to show you that. So I'm just gonna, Xiaoyou, you have till for just an hour, right? You have a class?
Yeah, I have class in 2 hours.
In 2 hours, okay.
I have class at
We'll
10 o'clock.
try not to take 2 hours, but it'd be nice not to rush either, because
I have class.
I have no idea how long this takes, but this is also kind of like this is something I do for all my students at some point, and I kind of take pride and I do it myself, and you know, it's like your induction. Okay, so you're seeing my screen, I assume. So yeah, so the question is, you know, so take a paper like this, and it has these composed illustrations, right, with lots of parts in them. And it's like, how do you do that, and how do you make it look good? So, of course, in the old days, this was done by taking a bunch of photos and developing them, and you know, literally laying them out and sticking little numbers on them, right, and putting little rulers on the actual photographic prints, and then putting them all under a plate of glass to flatten it. And you know, that's one of the reasons these are called plates, even though there's no plate that you would eat off of. So paleobotanists just refer to these as plate. This is your plate, or here it's just called figure one. But it's like these multi-part figures, and if you kind of look at it closely, like you see, I mean, I think we did a pretty good job on this. You know, there's exactly the same amount of separation between the photos. You see that? And all the little numbers are aligned perfectly. But and all the little scale bars are aligned, and all the fonts are the same, right? So, you know, it's a lot of work to get to that. But you know, as you can see, you can learn it. If you look at Gabby's paper, it's full of plates like this that she did. And then you see the photos themselves, you know, often when you look at illustrations, they look terrible partly because the color balances are terrible, right? The photos are usually too yellow when they're just kind of taken on a copy stand, for example. The color temperatures are wrong, they're too dark, they're too light. The photos don't look like each other. So you also have to kind of tune the photos to each other so that they look attractive. And you'll notice there are all these little details, like the scale bars have these, you know, how do you make the scale bars actually visible, right? Because you can imagine like a black scale bar with no border would be really hard to see, for example. So you have a dark background, you have a white scale bar with a, okay, am I actually recording? Oh yeah, I am, okay. So I'm getting into too much detail already, but you can see I've, you know, through my career, I've made lots and lots and lots of these, right? And so that's what it's all about. So I thought I'd kind of mock through this one because it has leaves, and you guys are both doing leaves. So this is the published product, right? So what you start with is, Zoom seems to have its own idea for what we're doing today. So you start with a folder of photos that you want to, you know, so the first thing that you have, so this is a folder for like everything from Lincoln to Lunco, and then I have subfolders for different species that I've sorted, kind of like what you're doing, Xiaoyou, with Brunei, right? Then you go into one of these, and make this big. What you see is like a whole lot of photos, and you know, way more than you can ever publish, right? So you've got to select the ones that you're going to use. And then I think Xiaoyou, you've used Adobe Bridge a lot, so, but I'm not sure that Eddie has. So Eddie, Adobe Bridge is like the hub program for the Creative Suite, and it's a visual. Think of it as a visual browser. It's like File Explorer in Windows, but with really good thumbnails and a whole lot of capabilities. So it has different, just very briefly, it has different views. This is kind of like the thumbnail view called Essentials. You can browse over here, right? You can make favorites and folders. It's just an immensely powerful and useful program. It's one of the, you know, it's one of the top ones that I use. Like it's right up there with EndNote and Word and Excel for how important it is. So you can change the size of the thumbnails here. And you can do all kinds of things. Like if you hit spacebar, you get full screen view. And then you hit your scroll wheel and you can zoom in. And it makes monitor size previews. It's quite powerful. Like if you tell it to, it will use all your memory, making giant previews and preloading them. And it, uses an enormous amount of resources if you let it on things like cache. So I spent a lot of time just looking at fossils like this, all day long. It's fun, right? And then so then it has a film strip view, which lets you look at things a little larger. It's loading a little slowly on this end. But this is, you can see the little circle is spinning, but you can also adjust the size of these, and you can you can have thumbnails on the bottom still, and you can make them small, you can make them large. And I hope this isn't crashing. Oh, it's the white screen of doom.
Just to let you know, Peter, I have class at 10:10.
Oh, you're the one with the class at 10.
Yes. Yes.
I knew somebody had one. Well, okay. We'll see how far we get.
Worst comes to worst, I can always just leave and then you can keep going and it's recorded and I can watch it later.
Yeah, we'll play it by ear.
Yeah.
Okay, so here, I managed to get back into the same folder. So in the film strip view, you can put things up and compare them, right? So this is a good way to look for your best photograph of something. Like these are all the same fossil, different photos of the same fossil. So there's a little loop tool, it is really handy, and you can scroll within the loop tool. So then you can compare different photos taken with different cameras at different resolutions. You can see, okay, this one's really got good detail, that one doesn't so much. In the spot, you can check the spot that you need the most to see how much detail there is. So that little loop tool is very handy. And then there's a metadata view is another one I use a lot. This is very handy for file jacking, where it just kind of lists the files out for you. And then you can look at a whole lot of them at once if you need to do some renaming. There's some really powerful tools for renaming. Have you noticed how these all have the same file format, more or less? But of course, they come off the camera with the camera's machine names. So I have a standardized format where it's the specimen number and then the timestamp of the photo. So there's the batch rename. So you can select thousands of photos at once and it makes a little script for you, and it gives you a preview of what it'll look like coming out. So you can take DSCN123 and turn it into an informative file name that starts alphabetically. So that's very handy. And then there are all these little windows that are useful. So Xiaoyou has extensively been using keywords. Right. So for different projects that get very large, like with the Patagonia project, we literally must have, I don't even know, it's something like 15,000 photos on my hard drive. So a way to find something quickly is to keyword it. So you can keyword by fossil site, by species, by the museum that it's in, by the different optics that we've used on it, the different preparations. So sort of any little bit of information that is going to be very hard to remember. Instead of writing it down in a notebook, I can just keyword it. And it's directly associated with the photograph in a little associated file. So the keywording features are very powerful and useful. And then metadata will show you everything about the photo that is recorded. That is recorded in the actual photo file. So here it actually remembered the original file name, even though I converted it, because that's an option. You can reserve it in case you ever want to go back to your backups or something. NEF, I don't know if you guys know, but do you know what raw photos are as opposed to like TIFFs and JPEGs? So a raw file is literally, it's a capture of exactly what the sensor saw. So if you take a picture, on your phone, it's usually a JPEG, right? But a JPEG is already a compressed file So it's already degraded to some degree. And on a nice fancy camera, you can also take a picture as a TIFF, which is an uncompressed, lossless file. So it has all the information, but it's already gone through some algorithms just to make a TIFF file. The NEF file is the pure picture. It's literally exactly what the camera saw. So I always take my pictures in raw formats. Now they tend to be proprietary to different cameras, so there are a lot of issues with that. NEF is the Nikon RAW, for example. ARW is Canon. To answer this problem, there's a whole world of this, as you might imagine. Digital photography is a huge thing. So there's a standardized format, digital negative, called DNG. So you can, if you want, convert everything to digital negative, and that's considered more archival because it doesn't depend on these. So anyway, this shows you the original file name, that it was camera raw. The other thing about the camera raw file is you cannot change it. It's not editable. And that gives you a certain amount of safety. No matter what you do, unless you actually delete it, you can always go back to the original photo. So that's a reason why for any kind of pro photography, I recommend, there are very few situations where I wouldn't recommend just always taking a raw file. So it has the timestamp of the photo, all the dimensions, the bits, all the stuff, what kind of lens, the f-stop. There's all kinds of information, the white balance, what camera it was a Nikon D700, what lens. So there's a lot of, and you can actually add stuff here. So you can add your own information afterwards, especially if someone other than, and all the adjustments that have been made in Camera Raw, which I'm going to show you. So these are all, so this image is already adjusted, but it's reversibly adjusted. So that's a really important thing that I'm going to show you. But this is also a good place just to make a note if someone other than you took the picture, so you can always credit them. One of my collaborators recently took a bunch of photos. I keyworded photos as having been taken by her, so I always know who took them. And then I can always put it in a caption, or Mike Donovan, right? So if it's not me, I want to make sure I know who took a bunch of pictures. So the metadata are a really nice thing to manage. Keywords are a really important thing. So I keyword pretty heavily. Xiaoyou and the Brunei project, and Gabby and her project are using the keywording. And Gabby's actually trying to write scripts to export the keywords to make data matrices out of them, which is sort of another step. Okay, so over on this side, so you can make collections, kind of like an endnote, where you can set a search, and if you hit it, it's a smart collection, so it updates all the time. So you can set any search as a collection, and then it'll go through a bunch of folders and find whatever you want, keywords, dates, picture was taken, just any of this information. So it's really powerful. But then you've got another really powerful feature is the filter on the left. So this is a little different from the keywords. These are search parameters. So it'll take whatever photos you're looking at, and it will search them. So you can look at all the pictures that were taken in May 2019. That's these. There are a whole bunch of things. You can take all the ones that are from Laguna de Lonco fossil site. That's all of them in this particular window. And it shows you how many of them have the particular keyword. So old photo is a pretty useful one, because that's a flag I use for when I've rephotographed something with a much better camera. So these are old photos from like 2003, 2005. So this lets me filter them out quickly, because they're obviously not as good, but I also don't want to throw them away just in case they have some information. So that's an example of keywording. Or if I do a whole lot of pictures at once, I want to remember that. So these are pictures I took at the Math Museum in 2017. You can quickly pull that up. And then you can have species. You can filter on date. Again, this is useful. I find all the time, I think, okay, I think I remember when I took a picture. I don't remember anything else about it. So you can filter on, these are the 2 pictures I took on that day. So it really takes you to another level. You can filter on your camera, you can filter on your model. This is really handy. Like if you're trying to separate your cell phone shots from your digital SLR shots, you can very quickly do it here. You can see the different models of cameras here. as going through the years on this one project. You can filter on file type. So this will be camera raw, JPEG, TIFF, right? So if you don't want to look at your JPEGs or something. And then very powerful, important thing is you can rate the photos. So you can give them stars, and you can give them labels. So just for this one, you can label it 1 star, 2 star, reject, whatever. And then you can give it color labels, and you can change the names of these. And using this technique, you can pick the photos that you want for your project. So without messing up the folder, you just leave the folder. So this says, it looks like this red label was the ones I like the most. So I think these correspond pretty well to the ones that are actually in the plate that got published. So now I've filtered down to just these 10. Any questions so far?
Give me 1 second. I have to grab tissues. My nose is going crazy.
Yeah, no problem.
Ran out of allergy pills.
It's that time of year. That's really great that you're doing so well with your grad school applications. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm still looking forward to some better schools.
Better. What do you
Like-
consider the best ones? Caltech? Did you apply to Caltech?
Yeah, I applied, but I don't think I will get an offer. But I think my top choice is UC Berkeley.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You haven't heard anything from them yet?
No, I talked to the professor in September
Mm-hmm.
last year, but I
Mhm.
haven't heard anything yet.
Mhm. Well, it's still early, and it's still early February. The season
Yeah.
goes in April, actually.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So are we meeting next week? Are you going on holiday for Spring Festival?
Yeah, we can meet next week because
Okay.
I'm having a holiday, but I will not travel.
Not traveling.
I mean, I'm not traveling next Thursday, so
Okay. Oh, we made the offer to next Thursday. So we made the offer for masters to Alejo. So he's pretty
Oh.
excited about that.
That's
Maybe
awesome.
I'll ask you guys to talk to him. We'll have some kind of a virtual visit for him.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah. So you can select. You can add stars. You can do both. Right. It's really up to you. But these labels are really good. So when you think a photo might be, even as you're working, if you think a photo might be, say, publishable, you can star it, right? And then later you can come along and, I never use more than 1 star, but you can have more than 1 star because I can't remember what's 1 star, what's 2 star. This is also useful for like a travel album, right? You can pick the best photos. So when someone wants a photo of something, you can quickly go to the best ones out of the 1,000 that you took and just filter them. So you can do that, and then you can filter even more there, and you can set keyboard shortcuts. Okay, so now let's say these are photos that I want to work with, and let's see, did I open? No. Okay, so what I did is I didn't want to mess with these. I copied them so that we can play with them. So I took these same photos, so you can make multiple Bridge windows. Bridge has a whole lot more functions that I'm even skipping over. So it's really worth just getting to know all the things that it does. Okay, so here's the plate. Here are the plate files in Photoshop, the final ones, but copies of them so we can mess with them. But here are the photos of the leaves. So these are just copies now of the ones I just showed you. Now, do you notice something different? Let's see if I can spread these out a little bit. You can change the size.
The coloration's a little off.
Yeah, exactly. So which one looks more ready to publish? The one on the left or the right? These are the same photos. But what's the difference? So these are the photos directly from the camera with no adjustments. I took all the adjustments off. And these are adjusted. So this little thing here is the adjustments window. And one of the most important things I wanted to tell you today is that the adjustment windows are all reversible. The adjustments are reversible in Bridge because you're using the camera raw engine. So it never affects the original file. And this is the key. So in most if you go to like photo editing software that you download, off the web, it's constantly changing the photo and resaving it as JPEG. So it's compressing it, which is losing information. And then you're making changes and then you can't go back unless you happen to save the original. Here, you only need one file and it saves the changes in a little tiny XML file that goes with it. It's called a sidecar file. So these are called the develop settings. And what I did was, one of the things you can do with the develop settings is clear them, or you can copy them to other photos. And when I cleared them, these are actually the photos from the camera. So the mistake that so many people make is they just publish this, they crop it or something. But you'll notice, I mean, if you look carefully, you'll see there's a lot of things. The color balances, most of the photos are too yellow, right? They're low contrast, but they're not cropped, of course, but they're also not aligned, right? So some of them, like you try to align photos when you take them, but it's never perfect. But you can see that this is a little bit off alignment here. So how do you make these adjustment layers? So I'll show you that now. So this is after and this is before. So we're going to go to the before panel here, and these are copies, so we can't. These are even though these are reversible edits, I don't want to change the edits that I've already done, even though I've published this stuff. Okay, so we can take any one of these. Something like this looks pretty hopeless, right? And I think you can open this this little button here. That's open in camera raw. You can also there's a manual thing. I don't remember where it is. I just use this little button. No, it was messing up on me yesterday. Let's hope this works. Yeah, see, it'll load all of them into camera raw. All right, so camera raw is this very special program within Adobe Bridge. And it's the interface between Adobe Bridge and Photoshop or any other Adobe programs you're using. And this is where you make those reversible adjustments. And it's incredibly powerful, and seemingly nobody knows about it. People don't use it, and it is like the greatest thing. So you can go to any one of these, and you can make your adjustments. So like a really basic one you can do, is crop the image. So, well, actually, one of the first things I do is almost always the white balance is wrong. This is the color temperature, or the balance between. Let me just do one of these. The balance between blues and yellows. So blue is considered cold. Yellow is considered hot. And even though you adjust the white balance, or you try to take the white balance that matches the lighting you're using, essentially, it's never quite right. So at the end, you want to fine tune this by playing with the slider. So where it doesn't look blue or yellow, where it just looks natural. So you can do that with your eye. But so usually the first thing I do is just for a starting point, I do an auto white balance and let it make the first call. Now all the photos, oops, there's so much stuff in here. I'm just like glossing over it, but all these photos already look a little more natural, and they also look more like each other. So just this all by itself, you can see that one's still a little too yellow, right? So slide it over a little more manually. There, now it looks more natural. But even this, if our colleagues just did this, their plates would look better. Okay, now you look at that one. So what's wrong with that one? It's too dark, right? I don't know how it looks on your laptops, honestly. So, so you have all these adjustments here. Now, doing these adjustments, there's a real art to it. You can't do it all at once because on different days, depending on what you have for breakfast, these pictures actually look different. And adjusting you make one day doesn't look the same a different day. So you want to do these over time. But the beauty of this is it's all reversible, right? So this one needs to be a little lighter. Yeah, so when's it too bright? Well, it's too bright when the whites become blown out and you can't really see anything in the white areas. It's too dark when the dark features, when you can't tell the dark features apart, right? So it's all about getting information. So you generally want to avoid extreme adjustments. So, we'll just go with that for right now. Okay, now almost all photographs don't have enough contrast to publish. So it's sort of a given that you always pump the contrast. Now, that's easy to overdo, right? So all these are really easy to overdo, which is why it's really nice to have these reversible adjustments. Okay, but there's some pretty powerful things here. So like highlights will only take the very brightest pixels, and usually you want to reduce those. So this, you can say, well, the specimen label, which we're not going to publish, but let's say that's just a little bit too washed out. You can shave off that super bright bit. If you overdo it, you're going to affect the way everything looks. But you can, if there's what we call a blowout, like an area that's just too white, you can take care of that. Similarly, if there's an area that's kind of too dark, you can bring it up. But again, if you do it too much, you lose contrast. So there's trade-offs. So the shadows adjustments is making the darkest darks lighter or darker. Oh, I should preface all of this by saying, are you allowed to do this to a photo? The answer is yes, you're allowed to do it, but only if you do the whole image at once. What you're not allowed to do is like to make this one little part brighter or darker. Whatever you do has to be the whole image at once. That's become a standard now. There was a famous stem cell researcher scandal in Korea, maybe 5 years ago now, where they had literally cut and pasted little bits of their gels around in an image and fabricated everything. And that was enormous. And every journal in the world responded with this policy that you can't change just a part of an image. So there's dust in the background. You used to be able to just kind of go in with a Band-Aid tool and take it out. You're not allowed to do that anymore. So, but these are all whole image adjustments. So similarly with the whites, this will crank the whites or decrease them. And you can see it really changes the impact of the picture. Remember how this looked when we started? It was so drab looking, right? But this particular one has these little micro faults going right across the leaf. So you don't want those to look too jarring either. And then it's actually a challenging picture, right? Because it's very light here. It's kind of dark here. So now I want to bring the highlights down a little so this isn't quite so aggressive. And then I use the blacks quite a lot. It's another way to increase contrast is to play with the black levels. So almost always I find myself bringing the black levels down and I compensate by bringing the overall exposure up. So the overall exposure covers all of these at once. And then all these little adjustments will cover different parts of the grayscale curve. Now these adjustments here are extremely powerful and you have to use them pretty carefully because you don't want to make something that isn't real, right? So this is a new one called texture. And you can see these even better. By the way, you can zoom in just like in Bridge, right? You can see this is quite a nice picture. It's still holding a lot of detail. So you can see the effect of these on the details, right? So it's tempting to just really crank these. But of course, that's actually not natural. Like that's not what you would see if you're looking at a microscope. So don't do that. But what I usually do is I kick up just the clarity, just kind of like a sharpening, no more than about 15 or 20. But I find it really helps with the overall look and the contrast without changing without doing anything that's fake. If you push it up too much, then it's fake, right? You can say, wow, look at this amazing fossil, gosh, but that's not natural. So you kind of push it right up to the point where it doesn't stops, where your eye accepts it as natural, right? You know, you can see what's happening. If you go too far, your eye doesn't accept it as natural. And I don't use this, but this you could use for like a family photo. There's a lot of fog or something, or a landscape photo maybe that you want to publish in a magazine. Now these are important ones too. Color, saturation, and vibrance are kind of two different ways of regulating how strong the colors are. I often find that when you adjust, that photos can have too much color, a sort of an unnatural amount of color, and then when you adjust the contrast, it has side effects. It can make some of the colors too strong. So rather than increase the saturation, you can see that your eye doesn't accept that as natural, right? I'm usually decreasing it. If you take it all the way down, you're to grayscale, black and white. But you know, whenever the colors don't look natural to your eye and you can't quite get it with the color temperature, a really good fix is just to bring the saturation down a little bit, like no more than about 10 or 15, because again, it'll look unnatural like that as well, right? Mike Donovan, for his thesis work, used this quite a lot because he was doing the insect damage, and the contrast adjustments were really important because without them, you couldn't see the details of the little insect minds. But when he'd done all that, you know, there were some synergistic effects on the colors that were weird. So he desaturated quite a lot. Okay, now there's just a whole lot of stuff here. You know, you can if you like playing with curves directly, you know, you can do it here. You can do the same things that I just did, but just doing it by yanking the curve around. I'm not particularly good at that. I like the sliders, but some people like to do it this way. You can do the light, or you can do the slider. So that's another way to do the same thing. You might sometimes go into detail. So I think this is the default from the camera. Sharpening. So sharpening is another one where it can really help your picture, but if you overdo it, you know, it doesn't look so great. It's just going into a different picture. So it's just like clarity. So if you don't have any sharpening, it just looks, to see sharpening at all, to see what it's doing, you have to zoom in to at least 100%. Otherwise, you're making an adjustment and you don't see what it's doing. So you can see that looks wonderful, right? But you know that's not natural, so you're not allowed to do that. So what I usually do with sharpening is I kick it up just to where you can see kind of notches up in the detail. And that's usually around 30 or 25 to 40. Because when it takes that first step up, you can see everything just a little better, but no more than that. It's something that you really have to take it easy on. Okay, there's more stuff with colors. So if you really want to get into this, you can desaturate specific colors if you think they're being expressed too strongly. I don't even know it. There's more stuff with colors. Yeah, vignetting you wouldn't do with fossils, but they can be very good for for family photos. It's actually kind of a cool effect to de-emphasize the corners, right? But you wouldn't do that with a fossil because that's a partial adjustment, right? It's the kind of thing they don't want. One thing you might want to do with a fossil, especially with some of my old photos, there are curvatures from the camera lens. So the straight lines are curved around the edges. So is that this one? Yeah. So you can actually fix that. So for some of my old photos where like I had using the first digital cameras and the straight lines came out as curved, you can fix that. That's very handy. There's more and more and more stuff. So anyway, most of what you do is under this basic menu, and then you just want to make sure you get the sharpening in under the detail menu. Okay, so once you've done this and you have like some preliminary adjustments, actually the first thing I do is just say done, and then I save them. Now you see the ones we played with, which is all of them, they now have these little adjustment tabs. And that preserves, and it's now in the metadata, what we did. I think for a lot of these, we only adjusted the white balance, but here we did a lot of adjustments. So they're now in the metadata. You can see them in Bridge. Now you can go into any one of these and you can clear the under develop settings with right click. You can clear them all. You can copy them to another picture, or you can change them again. So remember, the key is that everything is reversible. So you can go back to camera raw and you can change them. You can zero them all out. So you don't need to make copies of pictures. It used to be that people would make endless copies. They keep the original and then they do adjustment 1, adjustment 2, adjustment 3, and your hard drive is gone and you can't remember what you did. This keeps it to a single raw image, and then you're continually adjusting it. All right, so the next part of this, we're going to go into Photoshop. I'm going to show you how to do that. Any questions so far?
Would any of this need to be reported on if we're publishing these pictures, or is this just kind of assumed?
I just say that we do whole image adjustments in Camera Raw, Adobe Camera Raw. That's really all you need to see. That's all you're doing, really.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
For heat maps, would you want to adjust things since like you're changing the pics, like the colors, and like that's the whole thing that we're scoring for? Like, like when I start making those figures, should I be adjusting the colors on those?
Yeah. Oh, well, this would apply to. We're just talking about raster images, not graphs. So graphs are actually a whole different story.
Yeah.
Because those are called vector art or line art. And for those who use illustrators, we'll have to do another session on those.
Okay.
This is specifically for raster images that are composed of bitmaps of pixels.
Yeah.
Rather than line maps. So that's the big division in the computer graphics world. I don't know if you guys know this. Raster images and raster art and vector art. So when you take a picture with a camera, it's raster, which means that it's a map where whatever it is, 2848 by 4288 pixels, and each pixel has a color value, and that's called a raster image. In vector art, so Photoshop handles raster images, but vector art is what you would use for graphs and the like, and those are just maps of line segments and curves and things with various properties, and they don't have color values. Well, the lines can have color values, but there isn't a pixel value. There aren't any pixels. They're just maps of lines, and that's what Adobe Illustrator is for, and that's why there are these two different programs, and why they're so different from each other, unfortunately. So right now we're doing raster art, and so you might use these, Eddie, for your for your little fossil plate or or for the illustrations of scoring that you're doing. I forgot to mention really basic stuff, which is cropping. I don't even know where they put it. They keep changing the menu. Yeah, just C is crop. So just do that. So then you get this stuff, and it shows you a grid, so you can also rotate. So you want your strong lines to be orthogonal with the frame, right? So you see I'm aligning everything on the mid vein. And then to publish this, of course, you want to use as little space as possible. You want a clean margin all the way around the leaf. You take out the scale bar at this point. I'll show you how to put it back in later, don't worry. But anyway, you want to I'm not quite getting the whole leaf. This picture isn't quite so great. I want to make sure you get the whole petiole that's there in this case. And then, so you can rotate and crop at the same time. And let's see, then you hit enter. And the crop is also reversible. So that the scale information is still there. It's just not visible. Okay, really critical step. Do you see this little thing down here? This is where a lot of people go wrong. They've gotten this far. Okay, this is the conversion. This is the little engine for it's the little output engine, and there's a bunch of stuff here that you never use. But there's this all important one called workflow. See how they put it way down here? Okay, so there are a bunch of important things here. This is how the image will go from raw into Photoshop, where you actually compose the plate. So if you don't get this one right, you'll lose a lot of information. Okay, so the first thing to note is color space, and here you're like really getting thrown into some arcane stuff, with just like all the different color profiles that are available. And believe it or not, if you don't get this right, it causes problems with display and printing. And Adobe is always trying to force their color profile on you. And nobody's really there are like 10 people in the world who even know what a color profile does, except that it messes you up if you don't pick sRGB. So all you need to know is to use sRGB. If you don't, the color, you can try it for yourself. If you don't, the colors kind of look drab. Something goes wrong in my view. So the Adobe color space isn't very good, even though they're Adobe. They should really get a better handle on that. So they're always trying to force it on you. So you want to make sure it's sRGB. That's an important thing. And that's a standard. So that'll work with any printer, any journal. You have no problem with it. Okay, and then color depth is how much information there is in each pixel, right? So the newer cameras, take pictures at 16 bits. But so you keep that in your original file, but to make a plate, you never need that. And they're like 10 times the file size or something, or 4 times. Remember in the journal article, they're going to publish it at 300 dots per inch. And that's, you don't need the 16 bits of color information. This is just color information. So you want to make sure that's 8. Okay, now with this engine, you can change the size of the image. You can change the resolution. This is really good if you want to output a bunch of JPEGs for the media or something, or you want to post something on social media. You don't post a raw image, or you don't post a 60 megabyte TIFF file. So you can resize it. But of course, you don't want to do that here. So you don't check this box, because you want to preserve all the resolution. Output sharpening, presumably you've already done that, so you don't add any more. And then this is the all-important one. Always remember to pick this. Open in Photoshop as smart objects. I'm going to show you what that is in a minute. Smart objects, well, I'll just tell you what they are. Smart objects are Photoshop layers that retain the links back to the original file, so they become reversibly editable even within Photoshop. So if you make them small and make them large again, they keep their resolution. Whereas if you don't do that, if you make something small, it loses resolution. If you make it large enough again, it looks like crap. So, and every time, if you don't do this, every time you change the size of something, it's resaving it and messing it up. But a smart object doesn't do any of that. So it's absolutely, maybe the most important thing to learn today is to use smart objects in the workflow from Bridge to Photoshop. So when you've done all of that, then you can open objects. Okay, so now let's open the objects. So let's say, so now each one has one layer, and this little icon here means smart object. So one thing you can do is say, well, I want to make a plate. What you've also done, which maybe I'll just skip over, is you make a blank white page that's in Photoshop with that's the right resolution and is the size that the journal specifies. So if they say that their illustration should be 7 by 9 inches, you have a blank page for that. Then what you can do is you can now you're in Photoshop, you can arrange the windows so you can see what you're doing. Tile all vertically. Save this one. Right, so now I can take this one, I can drag it on, oops. Yeah, I should be able to drag it onto that one. And now they're both smart layers. So I can make this one small. Make these, you have to develop the sort of finger memory to resize the remember where all these buttons are. But if you hit Alt and click, it'll take you, it'll move you to it should move you to the correct layer. This is Alt on my keyboard. Yeah, see that? So I'm Alt clicking, or you can just select the layer. Now you hit F in Photoshop and you get the whole screen. Hit F again, you get curly whole screen. So I do a lot of my, this mode is the one I use the most. It's the first F, where all you see is the Photoshop window. That takes away a lot of the distractors. Now watch this. You can take this layer and make it teeny tiny. And now I can make it huge again. And it hasn't lost any resolution. And I can even go into the image size and I can change the resolution. So it's 600. It's 300, I can make it 600. Now you can't do that without smart layers because it'll interpolate, but it's not going to give you any new information. But you can actually upsample because of the smart layers, because it actually maintains the link to the original image. So it's just absolutely a brilliant thing. Now I can make this thing huge and 600 DPI, and it looks pretty nice. Now where this gets even more amazing and useful. Okay. There are a lot of tools. There's a lot of stuff to know in Photoshop. I'm glossing over a lot of things, but here's another essential. If you right click on a layer, one of the options is, well, you can duplicate, you can turn a dumb layer into a smart layer. You can copy a smart layer. All these things are pretty useful. But this one, edit content, you see that? This does something really remarkable. Let's see if it works. It opens it back up in Camera Raw, and now you can keep editing it reversibly in Camera Raw. It's like, oh, I don't want this to have any contrast, right? And this is not affecting the version that you imported. So even this is all contained within Photoshop. So it's not affecting the image that you imported at all. It's just affecting the image in the layer. So you can keep adjusting it. So really, you can do all your adjustments within Photoshop. You can just bring in all your layers and play with them there if that works better for you. As long as you do them with smart objects, you get the incredible access to all these reversible editing tools, every single one of them. Even the distortion and sharpening and saturation, they're all available to you again. So generally what I do is I get them sort of approximately set up in Bridge, and I bring them into Photoshop and I fine tune them. And I do that over and over again on different days of the week with different lighting. So you see it saves it, right? So after you've done this for a while, you get, here's the fully composed plate where I've been doing this for weeks on end, right? This is what actually got, not this exactly, but a TIFF export, a single layer TIFF of this is what got saved, actually sent and published. So this is the result of all of that. You can see these are all smart layers. So there are a bunch of little things here. Let's see. So one thing is there's a background layer, which is just the white box. So when you first make the file, you have to set the white box to be the size that the journal wants. You say, I want this to be a full page width figure. So they say, okay, those are 7 inches wide. So you specify that. So you have to do that right at the beginning. Although with the smart layers, if you mess that up, it's not a terrible thing. And if you set the resolution wrong, that's also not a terrible thing. But I usually work at 600 and I send them to the journals at 600 because that's double what they actually publish at, which is probably about right to use. So I can go into any one of these layers. You kind of have to right click and over to the right. For some weird reason, if you do it over here, you don't get the options. If you right click over here, you do get that magic menu item, edit contents. You see how they don't make it obvious, these really important tools. You have to look for them. So there it is. You can see that this particular layer, here are all the adjustments I've done. And it's been cropped. Okay, so we went over how to do all that. You just do it from the layers. Okay, so what the layers are, sort of take this down. All right, I think Alt-click will show only the one layer, yeah. So you start this with a white box. That's the correct size and resolution for the journal. And then because of the masking lines, I make another layer that's a different color. And this helps me set up the masking lines. Because if the masking lines are off, I'll see this different color peeking through, or the photos aren't aligned. So that's a nice little trick too. So you can turn this on and off, and you can see whether your photos are actually filling the frame. And if you do it right, even with this layer on, you can't see this green color. And then, then it's just a job of fitting everything and aligning it and doing the smart layer tricks. Okay, but once you've done, you can see if you kind of do that, there's uneven spacing and borders, right? And that doesn't look very good, even if you take that out. This is another mistake people make, is they send something like this to the journal. But this is what masking is for. So this is literally masking tape, right? You just lay something down that's a standard width. That's where the term comes from, masking. So these are just a bunch of lines of constant width. You can see there are a whole bunch of them. So to organize them and not make them awful, you just put them all into one group. Yeah, I can take them out one at a time. You can kind of see what they're doing. So they really make it better. So if you guys are making plates, I could send you one of these, by the way, as a dummy, and then you can kind of just move these layers around if you want. It's kind of like a starter set. But these are just lines. You just use the Photoshop line tool. You pick a width, 40 pixels, I think. And then you just start copying and pasting the layer everywhere. Okay, so let me do the scales next. Scales take a lot of time, as you might imagine. So here they're at the end, you want them all really nicely organized like this. So the scale actually has the bar and it has the lettering. And I'm kind of skipping over this, but the alignment menu is something you just use almost constantly. Where did it go? Running out of time. So there's a Photoshop alignment menu, and you're using this all the time to center, to make the distances constant, right? And to line things up vertically so they look nice to the eye. And then there are various things to do with the fonts and the bordering. So here you've got these nice heavy strokes that the whites are visible against the background. And then you've got to align these to each other and to all the other ones. But how do you do the scale bars? So that's a little magic trick. Maybe I have just enough time to show you. You can add little frills like arrows at the very, very top. And then we have the numbers. So the plate numbers are also a shapefile, which is the circle with the stroke and the letter inside of it. And then you also use the align tool so that the letter is actually centered, and use strict copying so the circles are all the same size. You used to have to buy these as little special stickers, and they were very hard to get, and actually put them on the photos very precisely by hand in the old days. So I still remember people like getting them in the mail. It's like, I got my plate numbers. So you just do these digitally now. Then you just use the alignment tools over and over again until everything's lined up and centered. And you can see that, like the scale bars are the same distance from the edge everywhere. Okay, so how do you do the scales? Well, the trick is to use the trick is, if I can remember it, you make a dummy layer. So new smart object via copy. Now you've got a copy, and you can I'm running out of time. You can rename this as scale layer or something. And then you can edit it. Now watch this. This is going to be this one. Okay. And copy it. And you'll see that it's been cropped, right? So what you're actually seeing is just the crop part, but all this information is still there. So all you need to do is to take your dummy layer and move the scale over and select just the scale. And you might need to rotate it. The scales are usually at an angle, so you can rotate the crop. Try to get it perpendicular. It'll make it easier to deal with. So that's a centimeter. And then you just hit OK. And there it is. There's your centimeter. So you can use this, and then you can make your nice looking scale on that basis and shrink it down. So this is just 5 millimeters. I used half of it, right? And once you're done with that, you know, stick it in a layer for a while and then just get rid of it. So I think I just deleted it eventually. And remember, you can always go back. So for each one of these, I made a dummy layer. So anyway, then you take the whole thing, save as, oh, sorry. Before, you don't want to save a multi-layer. When you're sending it to the journal, you're going to flatten the image to one layer. Boom, it's all one layer. And then you save that as a TIFF file, save as TIFF, and that's what you send to the journal. So you just select TIFF, figure4.tiff, and that's all they see. They didn't see all this work that you did. Anyway, I think I got through it. So we can do a follow-up if you guys want. I think this got recorded in the cloud, so I'll send you a link and send you on your way. Have a good day and evening. Hope that was useful.
Yeah, that was very useful. I had no idea about any of those functions. That was very helpful.
I think I should need to do a workshop. This isn't standard knowledge. Like I said, people don't know this stuff, and I don't know how they do their illustrations, but you know, this really works well. And if paper after paper after paper, and like many students of mine have adopted this and published beautiful stuff. So as you've seen, I think so. Gabby is a really great example.
Yeah.
Her plates are gorgeous, and you know, she used the same method. I mean, everybody modifies it a little bit, but the workflow is bridge, camera raw, reversible editing with smart layers. that's the summary.
Very cool.
So, all right.
I'll definitely start playing around with that.
Yeah, play around with it. But the thing for both of you to do is to go into Bridge and use a keyword or a label or a star rating to select the photos that you think are are likely to be publishable. So you don't even need to make copies of them. You can just select them in Bridge. You know, and then you can filter on them, and you can start to make decisions about which ones you're going to use, and you can start playing around with composing them and how they're going to look. And none of it is reversible. So that's the beautiful thing. It used to be that anything you did just messed up everything, and you can never go back. And you know, it's just not true. You can do something and just scrap it and go all the way back to step 0. So I don't want to keep you from your class, Eddie.
It starts at 10:10, so I'm good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So any questions about this?
My biggest question was for like the images that we have for like the scored heat maps that we're gonna put. Like, how much adjustment for those? Because those, like, I feel like that would be changing the color, and like that's what we were scoring for. You know.
Right. You probably don't need to change those.
Okay.
Yeah. So this might be more useful to you in the future if you're illustrating fossils.
Yeah, definitely.
You're going to be illustrating some fossils.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll probably need another one of these on Illustrator tricks.
Definitely.
Apply for graphs. Ellie, this should be pretty useful for you because you need to make, well, we'll talk about it, but you know, if you have time, you know, you could do this for your Brunei fossils.
Okay.
If you want to play around with it, I think for your project, what I'd just do first is just start to pick the most informative images, so we can make decisions about what those are. And then depending on if you have time for your thesis or not, you can always do a much more rough sort of plate for a senior thesis. You can literally do it in PowerPoint if you want to for a senior thesis. But if you want to make really nice pro plates that would go into the paper, you know, we can work on that too. All right.
Cool. Should for the fossil images on my paper, should I include a scale bar? Because do you think it's worth including scale bars for those?
Yeah, I mean, scale bars are always desired. So
Okay.
The photos might not have them, in which case I'll have to send you the original one to scale back to.
Yeah. Yeah, because the heat maps definitely don't have scale bars and anything like that.
Right, they don't. But that's all covered. And yeah, so well, pick the images first, and you know I have them all at this point.
Yeah.
So, you know, I can link you up. They should have scale bars if possible.
Okay, awesome. Then I'll definitely include them.
Cool.
Thank you again. This was very helpful.
Yeah. Now this is secret. Like this is secret knowledge. It shouldn't be secret, but yeah, it's one of the things I'm proud about as an educator is sending people out who know how to make nice illustrations. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, see you soon.
Yeah, see you later.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.